You've got lots of real estate questions. Should I downsize? What improvements do I need to make before I sell? What will Connecticut's real estate market be like in 6 months? It's time for The Real Estate Show with Pat Civitella. He's got your answers. Call 203-333-9422. Now, here's your host, Pat Civitella.
Hello, and good evening to everyone. Tuning into The Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Pat Civitella. Am I good with this, Rich?
Yep.
Okay. Over 35 years experience in real estate investing, and this show is about creating long-term wealth through real estate investing and producing passive or residual income with real estate. I'm going to share with you my knowledge and offer some of my guidance and inside information that most people are not aware of. And I can also show you how to develop and generate a secondary or primary income from real estate. And this show, we also talk about home improvement tips on increase the value of your home and the best return for your money on the different home improvements. I have a special guest tonight on the show, so if you have any questions, please call early because I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to our calls. If you have one, we will take one. I will entertain it. The number here is 203-333-9422. Again, that's 203-333-WICC, 600 AM, 107.3 FM. And this show is brought to you by our friends at 1-800-MR-JUNKER, Junk Removal Made Easy. They will take the good, the bad, and the ugly away. No need to do anything except point to what you want gone. Either one item or complete house or business cleanout. 1-800-MR-JUNKER is ready to serve you, serving Fairfield and New Haven counties for over 15 years. Please call our friends there and mention my name, Pat Civitella, on WICC, and you'll get 10% off your first job. Again, that's 1-800-MR-JUNKER for all your junk and cleanup removal. They offer same-day service available. They're also hot tub removal specialists and also offer free junk car removal. Again, that's 1-800-MR-JUNKER. Call them today, and you'll be happy that you did. And we're going to go right into the show. Again, I have a guest here tonight. I think I told everybody last week. I know I told you, Rich. But I just wanted to go into about my weekend. I had my sister-in-law up from South Carolina. I wanted to give a shout-out to her, Sharon from Myrtle Beach. It was nice having you up here. We had like a 4-day weekend. We had the whole family together. It was like a Christmas reunion because it's hard to get everybody together. So it was nice to see my nephew Max and his wife Charlotte and all of my kids except for my youngest. No, actually, my youngest son didn't make it because he was on his honeymoon. So we were able to see everybody, which was a super great weekend. My granddaughters. So we had a little mini party there for the weekend. And I'm not going to go into the food, Rich, because last week everybody said, oh, you talk more about food than you talk about real estate sometimes.
Pasquale starts talking about food, and it never stops.
Yeah, exactly. Go into one food to the other. All right, so how to get a hold of me off air. The number at my office is 203-736-2484. My email is patcivitella, that's PATCIVITELLA Excuse me. Again, the phone number is 203-736-2484. And you could also reach me through our Facebook group, which is under Connecticut Real Estate Investors Group. And you can reach me that way also. And I'm going to go right into my guest tonight. His name is Curran Bishop. I met him through one of our real estate groups that we initially went to back, I think it was pre-COVID, right? I think it was pre-COVID. Yeah, and and we started at the Milford Library, and for some reason, it's Rich. It's called the Milford Real Estate Group, but we end up meeting in Derby. For some reason, I don't know how it got switched to there. But
a brewery, and a lot more people come now that we're meeting at a brewery instead of meeting at a
You're
library.
you're absolutely right. I think last week we had about over 30 or 40 people there. But yeah, it's a great group. I'm gonna pass it over to Curran. Just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background for my listeners. And in our house, we call the Bishop family, we call them the modern day Little House on the Prairie, because they have 4 wonderful little kids, not little, but children. and they do the like the homestead. They have a chicken coop in the back. They do their maple tree syrup, right?
Yeah, we harvest our maple syrup or maple sap and boil it down to maple syrup.
And chickens. And what else do you do at the house? I mean,
I'm learning to garden.
Okay.
I'm very dependent on people that know what they're doing to tell me how to do it. But
Okay.
you got chickens, so the chickens actually, they produce eggs is the main thing.
Right.
But they also produce something else in large quantities that you could see as a problem. But they're also chickens are natural. They scratch.
Yes.
And so if you just throw enough carbon material in there, they make beautiful compost.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, I've got all this compost. I got to learn to garden so I can do something with the
because
compost.
my dad used to use chicken manure for years in his garden. Yeah, he used that forever.
Last year was kind of my first year full on trying it out, and we got some beautiful stuff out of the other byproduct of keeping chickens.
Yeah. And that's one thing I admire about Curran, that he's not afraid to ask questions. Like if whatever he doesn't know, he asks. Like I know he asked me a lot of different questions about real estate and real estate investing, or different scenarios or situation he has with his properties. And that's what I want to bring that out to the audience. That don't be afraid, because somebody's got the answer, right?
Right, exactly. Like we kind of have these mindsets that like you got to be the answer guy, but it's really much more useful to acknowledge that you need other people to be your answer guy. So yeah, I've really appreciated over the last 5-6 years, something like that, being able to reach out to you and be like, hey, who do you use for siding? Hey, who do you use for plumbing? Who do you use for electric? Just there's a lot of knowledge out there, and if you find people that know more than you do and ask them questions, you start learning stuff.
Absolutely, 100%. And I'm probably twice your age or 1.5 times, but I still seek out information that I don't know. Like on the way in, we were talking about social media, and we talked about that. I don't know anything about it. You got to get a 15-year-old or 18-year-old that knows how to navigate that stuff. So I'm not afraid to ask, because I know the value that is in asking. So, anyways, go ahead and introduce yourself, Curran. And then we'll get on with the show.
Okay, so let's see, the stuff you asked me about, you said, I was teasing Pat here. He gave me this thing that said, my background, I finished high school in 20 blank. I said, well, how young do you think I am? Because actually I finished in 1998.
Like I told you before, I says I had to originally put down 19, and I says, oh, wait, I don't think he's that old. So I changed it to 20.
It's just my youthful demeanor. Yeah. Are you telling which?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought I was getting a note there. So let's see. Abby and I met in college. Got married in 2003.
Okay.
And we have 4 children: 14-year-old girl, 12-year-old boy, and 10-year-old twins. And so Pat and his wife Nadine have gotten to meet them and are great kind of surrogate grandparents to them here in town. So yeah, I am a pastor. And actually, my kind of real estate journey is a little wrapped up in that, because I know a lot of people in the real estate space that are trying to become financially independent so that they can get out of the terrible day job that they have and not have to deal with it anymore.
Correct.
I love my day job, and if I didn't make anything from it, I would still be doing it until they nail the coffin shut. So I have no desire to get out of
what you're
job.
doing. Yeah, and that's awesome. And a lot of people think that you automatically have to give up what you're doing or what you love to do in order to be, let's say, a real estate investor or investing in anything. But that's not the case, and that's the beauty part, I think.
It's a great compliment to anything.
Yes,
and in my case, so I'm a pastor, but I'm also a church planter, which is what we call a person who is doing a church startup.
Mm-hmm.
Like as with any startup, there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of finding capital from other people that are other institutions, other individuals that are invested in your vision. There's also a high failure rate. I think nationally, if you look at entrepreneurial ventures, 9 out of 10 businesses fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, within our denomination, we have, I think it's actually reversed that. I think we have a 9 out of 10 success rate with new churches, but that's not 100%.
Right.
There's a need there for some resilience, and real estate has given a lot of resilience to my ability to do my job, because I know where the mortgage is coming from. And
right.
If it's taken us a while to get on our feet, if it's taken us a while to grow and become self-sustaining, I'm not worried about, are we going to be able to make the mortgage payment next month, because the way we've set up our properties is it basically pays for itself.
Right.
Now, my journey into real estate, my sister is currently runs a nonprofit in Africa, and they do community development. They do a lot of like talking to communities, finding out what the community's needs are, and then bringing resources that are going to be sustainable to where that community can learn the process and employ it.
Right.
Well, she first was getting into that. She's going to be an orphanage director probably close to 15 years ago. They had bought a house in Atlanta just after, during the lead up to the 2008 Great Recession. And so they were underwater in this house.
Yeah.
They were needing to get to the field. They were raising capital so that they could get to the field. And this house wasn't going to go away. They couldn't get out from under it. And what they came up with was, let's rent it out and see what happens. So they start renting out the house. And it was working. You know, they were losing, I think, a couple $100 a month renting this house because, again, 2008, you're dealing with they'd overpaid for it because that was what the market said it was worth at the time.
Correct.
We hadn't gotten the crazy low interest rates we currently, that we had until last year. But it was a way for them to go do what they were passionate about without, there were people that were stopped from going and doing something like they were doing because they still had a house that they were underwater.
Right.
Well, my sister and her husband said, we're going to rent it out. We're going to learn how this works. Couple years later, I am getting ready to leave St. Louis, where I'd bought a little fixer-up. I'd taken the advice that they tell you. You want to buy a little house that you can fix up, that you can improve, that you can improve the value on, and
put in the sweat equity.
Put in the sweat equity. I did that like crazy. We're getting ready to leave St. Louis. Well, this is 2012.
Yeah.
What we had paid for our house in 2009, when we thought, all the properties around us, or the recession's over, the market's coming back. Well, you could have bought a house for like 30% less than what we paid for that house, fixed it up for about $20,000, and still been less than we had paid for that house in 2009 because of all the foreclosures and the banks
so
had figured out how to make money on foreclosures.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to leave town, and we can't get out from this house. I'm like, well, my sister was able to rent. Okay, I'll try that. So we were moving to Carbondale, Illinois, about 2 hours outside of St. Louis. Same thing. We find a little house, we buy it.
Right.
In that case, I was first time as a pastor, wanting to get to know the job. We were like, okay, we're just going to buy something we don't have to do any work on. But it's a small house, little, not too far outside the downtown. I'm there about 5 years. We're getting ready to come up here, and at the time, Illinois had not had a budget in 2 years. And was the only state in the country. I
think I remember that on the news, hearing that on the news,
Yeah, Illinois was the only state more bankrupt than Connecticut at the time. So I was like, I'm one of the, 1 out of 50 in the country that can actually, this is an improvement in the way my local government's working to come to Connecticut. So as a result, though, the government kept threatening to close Southern Illinois University, which was why the town of Carbondale, it was kind of the economic engine that drove the town.
Ran it,
It looked to me, driving around town, like 20% of the houses were on the market. No, the university's still functioning. They still have grad students coming in. They've still got new faculty coming in, but no one wants to buy anything because this could all go belly up next year.
Right.
So I said to my wife, like, we're going to have to like hold this property and try and sell it for years, or we're going to have to rent it. I was like, well, it looks like I'm going to own 2 rental properties now. Maybe I should learn something about what I'm doing here.
So that's how you got involved.
I started listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast, started buying their books and reading. Yeah. And, it wasn't this like, give us $10,000 and we'll teach you how to be a millionaire overnight.
Go to a seminar for 3 days.
Exactly. It was much more, look, make reasonable steps, use tools, do calculations,
so
talk to
would
people.
You say your first step was Bigger after your sister's experience and yours with the couple of homes? Then your next step was Bigger Pockets?
Bigger Pockets.
Okay. Yeah. And you found that online, I'm assuming? Or,
I probably, honestly, I don't remember if I was just Googling, what do you do with a rental property or what? But somehow
which is a great, it's a great first step for anybody. Bigger Pockets has groups all over the country.
Right.
Probably
that's how I found you.
Exactly.
Just got on Bigger Pockets, found a local meetup, connected with the
library.
again,
it goes back to, we're seeking help. He's trying to find help on how to do this or he went out and searched it and got it. And again, I can't reiterate that enough, that if you have a question on something or you don't know something, you want to learn it, there's plenty of people out there that are willing to teach you or to guide you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And a lot of people that are humble enough to be able to say, that are willing to come alongside and be someone that you can learn alongside of. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, we had this was a funny So as we're getting ready to leave Illinois,
Yeah.
we've got 2 houses saved up, so or two houses that we're working on finding tenants for. I'm going, well, how am I going to afford a down payment when I get to Milford? This is
right.
I was making almost half what I'm currently making, and was still like very, very different economies. Rural Illinois, the house we had was $110,000.
Right.
And
that was the average home.
That's an average home.
Right.
Yeah, it was a 1,500 square foot home.
Right.
So I had been using Bitcoin. A friend was into it. Thought it sounded interesting. There was this program you could use where you could use Bitcoin to purchase stuff on Amazon because I can't remember how it was complicated. So I'd used it for a little bit. It got complicated. I stopped using it. I had about $300 worth of Bitcoin sitting in this thing. Didn't check on it for a year or so. Check back, and it's over $900. And I was like, well, I can't save enough money for a down payment between now and when I leave. I think I'm just going to invest the little bit that I have to invest in Bitcoin and see what happens. Now, I don't give advice to people. This was sort of one of those, like, I still recommend Bitcoin as a good investment to people, but not as a primary investment.
Right,
not as
right.
Hey, this is my nest egg. What should I do with it?
Put 90% of your worth in it.
I say, like, you want to be aiming for maybe 10% in something like that. But this was a time when Bitcoin was having its first kind of meteoric rise.
Yeah.
So we were able to get our down payment out of basically we put a couple $1,000s into Bitcoin. It started taking off, and I got a little nervous keeping on putting money in something that was getting that expensive. So I just held off, and that nest egg, I think ultimately it was around $4,000, turned into about $45,000.
Wow,
and we were able to pull that out, and it became the basis of our down payment.
Awesome.
So,
all right, I think we're going to take a little quick 1 minute break, and then we'll be right back, and we'll continue with Curran Bishop, and we'll continue on with the show.
Got real estate questions? Call 203-333-9422 and ask Uncle Pat.
All right, we're back on live here to the Real Estate Show with your host, Pat Civitella here, and I have Curran Bishop, and we're going to continue with this show. So Curran just finished off explaining how they got the down payment to purchase the home here in Milford. And now, Curran, explain to us what you bought here in Milford and what you have and how you're operating it.
Yeah.
And so forth.
If you have time for the story, finding it was a little unique. We knew we wanted, our criteria was we wanted a multifamily within walking distance of the downtown. We wanted as a church to be able to really be focused on the downtown area. I see the church as being sort of a community creating institution. And so we wanted to live nearby where we could invite people into our home, connect with people. Well, that's a kind of thin market. There's not a whole lot of multifamilies going on the market. Yeah. We've been watching the market for 18 months or 2 years. And just nothing was coming up. So finally, and again, this is probably a tip I got from someone through a podcast or through one of these. That was when we first moved to the area.
I've used that technique before. Yeah.
So it's a version of driving for dollars. Is what people call it. I found Milford's GIS data page. And if you're thinking of doing something like this, pretty much every town in the country, you just Google, GIS, that town name, and you will eventually find a link to. Typically, it's a graphic map.
Yeah, it's a whole map.
Google Maps. Yeah, and you just click on the property, and it tells you who the owner of record is, how recently it was purchased, how recently it was sold, what the taxes are, all of that stuff.
Yes.
So I start going through the GIS data, just street by street, looking at what's a multifamily that's in the area I'm looking for.
For your criteria.
For my criteria.
Yeah.
So I generated a list, came up with honestly, it was 35 names, put together a letter, put a picture of our family in the letter, said, I'm new in town, I'm wanting to buy a multifamily.
Which that was very smart. Very.
You personalize it?
Yes.
I'd been given advice, personalize the list. You want a picture of who it is they're dealing with. You want the story. My mother's got Alzheimer's now. I was thinking about maybe the possibility of needing them to move in with us. So I explained this in the letter. It was very short, though. Kept it to like 2 paragraphs. I sent out 35 letters. I ended up hearing back from, I think, 3 people. One we got as far as actually it worked and we bought it. So, and I understand when you're doing that technique, you should expect about a 1% success rate. So I made a 3% success rate. So
you made an unbelievable score with only 35.
Yes, 35. And I assumed I was sending out the first iteration of what were going to be several mailings.
Right.
And I got enough, deal options generated off of that first mailing. We were
that
able
was
to
that
move
was
forward.
Awesome. So tell the listeners about what type of property it is, how many units you have, and And how are you operating it now?
So we're just off of the downtown Milford. It's a 4-unit. It's 2 buildings.
This is all on one property.
All on one property. Yeah. There's a main house and a garage building. The main house has I guess you'd call it an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, in the back of the second story, and the garage has got a little 2-bedroom on top of it and a kind of a large studio behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It was distressed. The person that was selling it was getting older, was having trouble keeping up with maintenance. So there was some certain things going on. That was we didn't. I have nothing against realtors, but it was so easy to work a negotiation where you're just sending letters back and forth to the owner because you just, hey, this
you
is
cut
what I
out
want.
the middleman.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you can talk directly. You can find out what they need. You can find out what you need. You're not splitting the difference. You're finding out how do we meet your needs, and this is. And it was. I had a friend that was actually attending one of our Bible studies that was my inspector. So he inspected the property. He pulled me aside. He said, "I wouldn't tell this to a client, but do not buy this property." Well, I knew the person I was trying to buy from, and I knew my inspector, and I'm like, what's? So
what don't I know? Right.
I told him, give me the punch list of like the major things that have to happen.
Yeah.
I went out and I found 3 estimates on each thing. I was able to come back to the owner and say, look, I knew about the roof. I didn't know about X, Y, and Z. This is what it would cost for me to do this. I would have to have you come down $50,000. I understand that's not reasonable. Thank you. And they said, no, we could do that. So I'm like,
again, goes back. If you don't ask, you don't know. Everybody's afraid for that big ask. And I'm thinking, I've been drilling this into my kids' heads for, what do you got to lose? What's the worst thing that can happen? No,
they might say no.
They'll say no, and everybody runs for the hills. I mean, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Right?
As someone once said to me that the person who can be the most calm in the negotiation, the person that's going to get most of what they want, is the person who can walk away from it.
Yes.
And I was honestly trying to walk. I wasn't trying to bilk the person. I wasn't trying to play games with them.
Right.
I was like, this might not be a good idea. I need to get out. And if I'm not getting out, I need to be a good enough deal that I can make this work financially.
Right. Yeah.
And I was going to take no for an answer if they said, no, we can't do that.
Exactly.
And they were motivated. And they said that, hey, we raised a big family in this house. We've seen a picture of your family. We'd like to see that happen. Yeah. So we worked it out and moved forward.
That's awesome. So
we've had a pretty long we've had to replace the whole roof, the whole we've done extensive insulation.
And this is
HVAC.
The last 5 years.
It's been slowly unrolling over 5 years. We've got the structural stuff done now. Now it's cosmetic stuff.
Right.
What I've been doing is when it's a
you're working at priorities. You
work priorities.
Yeah.
And if I'm fixing up an apartment, every month that it takes me to do that work myself that I don't have a tenant is money lost.
Right.
So what I've tended to do is if it's for my part of the house where it's mostly just cosmetic stuff, that I'm doing weekends, little vacation time here and there.
Yeah.
If it's an apartment, I'm like working my network of folks like you saying,
right.
Hey, I
got to get this
who's your
turned
drywall?
over. Yeah, I got to get it. Yeah, I got to turn around. I got to turn the property over.
Exactly.
Tell the audience about your Airbnb because you're doing mostly Airbnb now.
So we had like I said, it's 3 units.
Yeah.
And I'll take a second on this. So the pandemic starts.
Yeah.
And we had I had to go to my tenants and say, I'd love it if I could say, hey, things are crazy, don't worry about the rent, but I can't make my mortgage without your rent.
Right.
But talk to me. If you're having trouble, let's work something out. Let me know what's going on. We can work through this. They were great tenants. They communicated well. But the point was we had a dialogue going the whole time so that if something was going to come up, we were going to know about it and we were going to work through it. And it wasn't just a, hey, I'm going to kick you out if you can't make the rent. It was a, let me know what's going on and let's figure it out. So the pandemic, starts winding down, things get a little bit more normalized. Oh, that was just before the pandemic. We hit the 9-month period when we had, we'd been in the house 9 months. We were able to refinance and rates had kept coming down.
Right.
So I was talking to a few different friends that worked for lenders, had a couple of apps in the process. Pandemic hits and things get weird. And I already had an offer on the table from one bank. So I went ahead and finished it.
Locked it up.
Locked it in. Yeah. We got into good rate. Of course, rates keep coming down. I kept calling my friends and being like, hey, can I get a new loan? And they're like, you're a multifamily. No one wants to touch multifamilies right now. So we had a tenant, middle of the pandemic, moves out, got the place fixed up. As we're fixing it up, that tenant calls me back and is like, I think I made a mistake. Can I move back in? I'm like, well, I've invested a lot of money in your apartment now. I can't give it to you at the rate I was doing. Yeah, I'm sorry. Again, explained really carefully.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, too. with that person, I was able to do, I call it financial counseling, not financial advising, but just like, here's how to make a budget.
Right.
How much do you make? And are you, if you're putting 50% of that towards your rent, you're renting something that you can't afford. You need to think again about
exactly.
this. So we were, again, with communication, we were able to keep even communication. My wife and I are going out to celebrate our anniversary. We're checking into an Airbnb, and it's maybe the first or second time I've used Airbnb. That tenant texts me and says, I'm taking your advice. I'm finding a cheaper place. Unfortunately, that means I need to give you my 60 days notice. And I said to my wife, well, let's make this fun. Let's make this a research trip. We're just going to, so we started asking our Airbnb host,
right? Hey,
we're about getting ready to turn one of our apartments into an Airbnb. What can you tell us? This lady was so helpful, gave us, all of her like tips and tricks.
Right,
or like,
right.
You don't want to, you would definitely want to spend money on your what do you call it, linens.
Right.
Because you wash these things constantly.
Right.
They're getting used by different people.
Right.
You put your money in your linens. Go to the thrift shop as you're buying your furniture.
Right.
Make it look cute. You don't need to go take out a loan on furniture for this thing. So anyway, we get the apartment turned around, ready for Airbnb. Got started Airbnb-ing in March of 22. So we don't have a lot of experience. We've only done one unit for 2 years.
Okay.
But it's you and I were talking earlier, and you commented like this is like running a hotel, like,
and which it is, right?
There's more work involved.
Yeah,
It is definitely
But it's worked for you. Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
I'm sorry,
but that's okay. So overall, you're doing Airbnb. You enjoy it. It's working.
We enjoy it. And the thing is, you have systems.
Right.
Figure out your systems. But
exactly.
we've got someone that does cleaning for us so that we're not constantly having to get in there and clean for the next guest and so on. We put our systems in place. We work the systems, and things work pretty smoothly. So it's been a great deal for us.
All right, Curran, I want you to plug your church real quick, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, sure thing. So I am the pastor of Christ Presbyterian Church. We are a small church that launched literally 2 weeks before the pandemic lockdown started. We meet for worship in Harborside Middle School, 10:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings. We're a church that's committed to building community. Just the need that humans have, we say as image bearers of a triune God, we're made such that we need other people, and the church is a place that connects us to each other and to God.
And how do they get a hold of you?
So my email is curran.bishop, curran.bishop @gmail.com. It's probably the easiest one. If you want to check out our church, it's CPC, as in Christ Presbyterian Church, cpcmilford.org.
Perfect. Okay, Curran, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thing.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And quick closing statement or closing notes that I always have, and I tell my audience all the time is, buy assets, not liabilities. Pay yourself first. Rich, did you pay yourself first this week? Rich said he did.
I tried.
It's
a challenge sometimes.
Right. Remember,
automate it, then it happens.
Exactly. Remember, you make a living from 9 to 5. You become financially independent from 5 to midnight. I wanted to shout out to my granddaughters, Mia Civitella and Juliana Rosa. Big Pop loves you. We had fun today at the beach a little bit. And thank you for tuning into our show. Stay positive. Buonasera a tutti. Alla prossima settimana. Thank you for tuning in to the Real Estate Show with your host, Pat Civitella, and God bless America.